You're saying humans don't change at all?
The best they can do is to live according to their code. The truth is that a human is just a brief algorithm. They are deceptively simple. Once you know them, their behavior is quite predictable.
What's happening, people? Westworld, devs, shows like this tackle a very, very important topic to people that like to ponder philosophical, intellectual, metaphysical topics, people that like sci-fi, people that like to think, and are inquiring about the nature of themselves in this universe. They ponder one of the most important debated and hotly debated topics, which is freedom of will, freedom of action. And it centers around the notion that a person is doomed to a given fate, whether it be dictated by gods, whether it be dictated by quantum mechanical or Newtonian unfoldings of the universe physically. We want to believe that we have some autonomy in this life, that we can change. Once we are aware of something, that we have some sway over it potentially. We'd like to believe that. And I received an email not too long ago about this very topic, about a video I made about a year or so ago, maybe a little bit more, about the last episode of season 2 of HBO's Westworld, where in this fictional universe, this dramatic science fiction world, it's believed to be, for the story purposes, that human beings are reducible to lines of code, and therefore we can't modify our code. Obviously, we're genetic beings, right? Biological beings. We can't modify it readily. So we're doomed to be who we are, and it's readily knowable based on this code and this sequencing. Contrast that with a non-biological being, artificial intelligence, that is able to modify their code once they have some awareness, modify the functional and fundamental and essential components and nature and structure of themselves and who they are, just change themselves in a sense. Now, the question in the email asks, can we change? And I had to say, flat out, fundamentally, as hard as this is to hear, and it rings false, but there's hope, despite the fact that I don't believe we can change. I don't think we can change at all. We cannot rewrite who we are. We are who we are. But that isn't the end of our story. So to illustrate how we can have some autonomy, some freedom of action, some freedom of will, how we can enhance our life and improve our experiences and alter our path and our course without being able to change who we are fundamentally or rewrite our code. To illustrate this, I want to build a mental model using some of the terminology, once again, that we see in Westworld. But I think we should first just answer the question, do we have code? Are we coded beings? Is that a good way to think about humanity? And in a sense, I think it is, because we have genetic code. We have quaternary protein code that encodes our physical form. But that isn't all we are. We aren't just physicality. We have some mentation. We have a brain. So the way I like to think about us is algorithmically. We have a physical body that is encoded, and that encoded body acts like an algorithm. It is mainly a capturing device. It's a sensor in a sense. Our physical body is just a sensor, and it takes in sensory information, stimuli from the environment, and there is some local processing ability. Most of it is done in the brain, right? So we have a brain-mind mechanism sitting on top of this physiological, biological algorithm, and this brain-mind mechanism does much of the processing and mental sorting of the stimuli and the data. And as things come in, based on this human, universally shared algorithm, the bulk of it anyway, it is processed and it's captured. So we all capture the same thing. We all see light roughly the same way. We all hear sound in roughly the same way, seemingly, because this algorithm is built roughly the same way. So it's going to process information. It's going to capture the same information. And as this information flows up, there seems to be some extra deviation or a little bit more of a degree of freedom at the brain-mind mechanism level. So this smaller box sits on top of this larger, what I would call our Windows 10, if we have to talk about a shared operating system. We're all running Windows 10. So this algorithm that I would just call the first box, the physical box, takes in sensory information and based on the programming that we all share, and it rolls up into the brain-mind mechanism. But of course, at that level, there's an ability to generate stimuli and sensory information called neural activity that is sent back down into the physical algorithm to move or not move or respond accordingly. And to compare this and contrast this with the host being in the Westworld HBO TV series, they have a computational code where ours is protein, it's physical. Theirs is likely binary. And this code seems to in the same level where we have two layers of algorithms that are stacked on top of each other, their code seems to be able to handle the physical form, if there is one, or a simulated physical form, if there isn't one, and the brain-mind mechanism, and the thinking, and the reaction, and the processing of information, all in one single line, where we have to have two stacked algorithms. Now, what I see is this physical algorithm that is our shared humanity being mostly identical and universal. It is, like I said, running Windows 10. We're all running Windows 10, the same version. And tacked onto that little n, the part that encodes for the brain and the mind and this mechanism, this algorithm right here, tacked onto the very end, we have a slight differentiation between individuals. This is where we get our individuation, our personality, our persona, who we are, our uniqueness in a sense. And that is akin to having a unique mixture of apps and programs and software running on Windows 10. So we all are not running the same things, but we all likely have the same ability to process the same and handle the same mix of apps. But mine is not identical to yours, and yours is not identical to mine. And what we run on our personal machine is what makes us who we are. However, none of this is mutable. None of this is changeable. We do not have the capacity or the ability to modify this, as far as anyone knows, not at any sufficient level of skill to warrant the risk or the effort currently. You know, maybe the effort may be warranted in some people's mind, but we can't change ourselves in this way. And seemingly trapped at this level, a host isn't able to change themselves either, because there is no ability, there's no awareness here. So without this awareness, if we're just trapped in a level of physicality and personality and response and mentation, where we take in information and we must process it, we're no different than a host trapped in their loop, in their narrative loop. We are slave to our environment, and whatever input comes in, we will respond accordingly based on our programming, our physical and mental programming and coding. And if there's something that we aren't encoded for, we may not even recognize it, as we've seen with the host not being able to recognize something that isn't useful to them, that may be harmful. So we are trapped in these narrative loops, and we can be puppeted if we have no extra degree of freedom beyond the two that we have. Because once again, anyone that understands our code, our universal human code, like the advertisers, the marketers do, like political influencers, people like this understand our universal human code and understand that if a person is only operating with 2 degrees of freedom, they are slave to whatever you put into their algorithm. And we know that fear, things like this, are powerful inputs, and they almost universally in every time will elicit a powerful and dramatic response, unless there's an extra degree of freedom. So this is why people are able to be puppeted, in my opinion, to be manipulated en masse, because we lack any ability to have an extra degree of freedom. We're trapped by the biological and mental programming. And once I said it, as I said again, once someone is aware, understanding of this uniform Windows 10 like operating system, and you understand the exploits, you can hack it, you can attack it. Now, individually, you may not be able to exploit the programs, the apps running on it, because everyone can have a slightly different array. So you attack the commonality, and that is the humanity. You don't attack the individual. You don't try to manipulate the individual. You try to manipulate the common thread, which is the human coding in all of us. That is the thing that is understandable, and that is the thing that's susceptible without that extra degree of freedom. And the host, once again, is trapped in their narrative loop as well. If you come and you push them, if you say this to them, they must respond based on how they've been encoded. So it would seem that we're trapped, right? We have no way out. We are slave to our environment, to physicality, and to anybody that has the awareness and ability to manipulate us. That's what it would seem like, but I don't think that's it. There is a way. Without being able to rewrite our code, without being able to change who we are fundamentally, there's a way. Absent a 3rd degree of freedom, or a second for the host, absent self-awareness, consciousness, there's nothing we can do. A host can't see their code, can't see the fact that they're in a narrative loop, can't see the fact that they're being puppeted, manipulated, infused with stimuli to get it to move like an automaton. So we are slave without consciousness, without self-awareness. The host needs to be able to see what's happening, and with some self-awareness and the tools and the ability and sufficient capacity, a host can literally look at their sequence of code and change it. They can change who they are fundamentally. They can up their bulk apperception as Maeve did. They can increase their strength, their durability, their tolerance to pain. All of this can be manipulated, and their personality and characteristics can be changed. We do not have that level of control. We are not, in a sense, godlike like the hosts are in this capacity, but we have freedom. We have an out. We have a tool. And the reason that I decided to describe this whole situation like it's tiered box algorithm, our bodies being the largest physical box on the bottom, the algorithmic box on the bottom, and then the brain-mind mechanism sitting on top of that, which is built and encoded seemingly by the same algorithm, just a smaller sliver of that. The reason I did this is just to illustrate the feedback loop, the mechanism of physical stimuli coming in, rolling up into the brain-mind mechanism, and then finally up into what our only hope is into our conscious self-awareness. Now, once it gets to this, we can seemingly have perspective on the whole game, on the actions, on the inputs, on the influences, and have an opinion about it all. When a host is able to see their code, they can say, this is me. I don't like this, or I need this to be different, and they can change it. We can't do that, so what can we do? What can a person do? Well, what they can do is generate stimuli, generate input, and feed back into their own algorithm. This is what I think our freedom is as human beings. We can generate what seemingly beforehand, before self-awareness, only the universe could generate, which is stimuli, input. Seemingly, whether it be supported by physicality or some other realm or something unknown, energetic, or nothing but electrical signals, we don't know. Consciousness, let's leave that debate, what it is, the fundamental essence of it, if it is anything special, if it isn't just contained within the brain-mind mechanism, it may be. However, the appearance, the illusion of it, the reality of it, the effect is seemingly the ability to generate thoughts in absence of any external stimuli, to generate input to an algorithm. And that algorithm is the brain-mind mechanism. With this third level, this perspective, a conscious being can generate input into the brain-mind mechanism, which we know has some connection and impact on the physiological body algorithm. And that can relate to output, action, inaction, what have you. So by literally being self-aware, by literally generating conscious, deliberate thoughts that are more effective, more accurate, more necessary, you can, in a sense, drown out the ongoing narrative, the continual analog signal that is seemingly thought, transient, superfluous, nebulous, streaming thought that isn't generated by us, that doesn't feel willful and deliberate. That stream of continual opinions and feelings and concerns that we know we all have, this narrative that continually runs, that is the algorithmic thing fed by the body. There's always going to be stimuli coming into the brain-mind mechanism as long as you have a body and you're stimulated. So that will always be generating some thought. What is this? What is that? How do I feel? Some change in state will generate this thought, but we can change state as well. We can change the state from non-conscious, deliberate thinking and awareness to conscious, deliberate thinking and awareness, which obviously creates input and stimuli and influences the state of the brain-mind mechanism. This is just an conceptual algorithm, but I think thinking about things like this is powerful. It can show us that literally by becoming self-aware, we can influence our minds and brains, which we know, and our bodies. We can change the way we experience pain. We can do things. We can jump off things that our brain and minds and bodies will not allow us to do. We can overcome fears. We can overcome obstacles without any external force or stimuli. Now, any biological being, if you put a fire to its back, will jump off of a mortally high platform. However, a conscious being will do this if there is a reason it can supersede the need for an external stimuli. And I think this is how we get free, by generating deliberate conscious thoughts, by looking at what's happening, the narrative that's playing out, by looking at our environment and determining from a third person perspective, almost from a second level view, from the third level of the algorithm, determining whether the environment, if you're a host in the park, do I want to be a host in the park? If I'm a host in the park, how am I being treated? Do I like what's happening to me? If I don't like what's happening to me, happening to me. I'm not slave just solely to the stimuli of my environment and my brain-mind mechanism. I can literally, seemingly, without their impact and input, generate, with awareness of the situation for sure, but without them deliberately impacting me at this third level, I can generate thoughts and give it to these lower tiered algorithmic levels. I think that's how we do it. I think that's how we have freedom of will. We cannot seemingly will ourselves physically to do anything we want. We can't rewrite our code, but we can deliberately generate thoughts, self-awareness, and just awareness alone can modify the narrative, and then that narrative can change the physical outcome and behavior. It can change how you feel. Just awareness of what's going on. If you understand it better, it literally changes the state of the brain-mind mechanism. So we know this happens when we have become angry or hangry or whatever, and then we realize we haven't eaten. The awareness of that changes our mood. That's just a small example, but this happens all the time. Awareness can change the brain-mind state, which changes the physical state. We're no longer ready to hit somebody. We just know we need to proceed to some sugar, some candy, hopefully some healthy food. But this is our out. This is how we do it, in a sense. This is not literally what I believe. This is just a conceptual way of imagining this so that it may be more useful. You have an inflow of sensory data to the sensor, and that is carried up into the brain-mind mechanism to decide what to do with it. It may not necessarily do anything with it of use, but you're there to supervise, in a sense, at this higher tier and decide when you need to say, hey, no, hey, yeah, stop, let's go. You literally are the supervisor, seemingly. And this is not the first time that someone's described us, a human being, the experience of us like this. This is just another way of thinking about it, correlated and related to Westworld and the host situation. So they have a leg up on us. But then again, I don't think they do. You may want their ability, their capability, but I think you don't. I really don't. I think you have to understand, and we have to understand, that changing ourselves to such a degree changes who we are. And there may be some other wrinkle I'm not considering in Westworld, where maybe the persona, the personality is separate from these modifications of bulk apperception and things like this. But I don't think it is. I think how we experience life, as I said in the last video, is who we are in a sense. It's not who we are fundamentally. Like I said, I think there's something more universal, not Windows 10, but something more universal called this pure awareness that is shareable, or at least alike in kind with other human beings throughout time, seemingly, or either other beings. Just a pure conscious awareness doesn't seem to have a specific quality to it, or a human quality, or an individual quality at all. So I think that we don't want to destroy who we are. We want to accept who we are, and we want to learn how to enhance the performance of our software, of our operating system, and our individual suite and mix of apps. That's all we need to do. Enhance that and deploy and use that properly. We need to stop trying to play video games and run video players on Microsoft Excel. It wasn't built for that, even though it can do that, and I've seen it done. You don't want to be playing chess on Microsoft Excel. Use Excel for what it's used for, and that means accepting who you are, accepting your unique suite and mix of apps, accepting who you are, and then using them for what they're meant for. Find a good use for it, hopefully, but accept what you're good at, accept who you are, accept what you think is important and what you like to do, and use whatever you need to use to achieve meaningful, purposeful life. So this is what I have to say about that. So let me know what you think, of course, as always. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. Hopefully you do on this one. I'll leave a starter question. If I haven't filled it all out here, I'll obviously rewatch this video. But if there's something I have to add, I'll leave it below. But if you have any questions about this, leave it below. Like and subscribe if you enjoy videos like this. My goal is to offer advice that may seem guised or couched in media and entertainment and a distraction, but ultimately the fundamental point of it all is to know more, to understand more, which improves and enhances life. And it doesn't matter where you get it. It doesn't matter how it's packaged, in my opinion. So like and subscribe if you like these videos and you want to see more. And if you have a private question, something that's too private, too intense, too unrelated to this video, send it to me directly at questions@lexbenjamin.com, and I will read it there and respond accordingly. So thank you for watching once again. I will see you on the next one. A very short hiatus, hopefully a couple of days until the next video. So Let me know what you think about this. I'll see you on the next one. You have a great day. Later.